So again, welcome to poster session number one, Saturday's poster session. I'm very thankful that I have this wonderful group of colleagues here with us today, and they're going to talk a little bit more about their posters. So without further ado, we're going to roll just in the same order we did on the YouTube video. So Julia, you are up first.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Julia Austenfeld. You may also know me as V, and my pronouns are they, them, theirs. My poster paper is titled Acoustic Registration for Transgender Singers on Testosterone, and in my paper I discuss formant profiles of transmasculine singers as well as singers who have not pursued hormone therapy.
Excellent. And you found, essentially, if I'm understanding correct, that you did not find much effect on changes of the first and second format. Is that correct?
Yeah, so what I discovered with this study was that, at least in the singers I surveyed, I had 11 singers, there were no significant differences in formant 1 and formant 2 between singers who had pursued testosterone therapy as adults versus singers who previously already went through estrogen puberty and then never did pursue testosterone.
So, you know, if the format frequencies weren't reading any different, do you think that we are seeing maybe a difference then, that we would actually see something like a difference in vocal fold depth or vocal fold thickness if we actually went and did that study?
Yeah, so the existing literature suggests that the thickness of the vocal folds is what changes, but that is not like an area that I studied in this particular study because it was not like a visual assessment of the vocal folds. But I believe my colleagues who have done that research have found that it's generally a thickening of the vocal folds on testosterone. And so what I was really interested in exploring here was whether we see changes in laryngeal depth or in the vocal tract in general on T therapy when it's taken as an adult. And what I found here is basically that we don't. And so the idea is that then like the cover and the points of turning for these tenor and baritone voices is going to naturally be different than you would see in a singer who experienced testosterone puberty in the normal.
Excellent. Well, it's definitely an area of research that we need more information on, for certain. I mean, it's sort of an area of research in a way in our community. It's in its infancy, I think we would probably say. But congratulations and thank you for joining us. Absolutely wonderful, wonderful contribution. Okay, moving on. Laura, you two are up. Go ahead and tell us who you both are and what the title of your poster was.
I'm Laura Chipe and
Margaret F. Miguel.
And the title of our poster was The Legacy of Alberto Nepomuceno, Brazilian composer of art songs.
Nepomuceno, am I saying that close to correct?
You are.
Great. I practiced it a few times. We had quite a few people write in about his sort of activism. You talked a little bit about his the fact that he was an abolitionist. How do you feel? Do you feel that that aspect of his activism is represented in the songs in any way?
Want me to start?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I'm glad we're talking about this today because this is Juneteenth.
When we recorded, very appropriate. Yes.
I know,
absolutely.
when we record. That's right. And the United States abolished slavery in 1865. Brazil only abolished slavery in 1888. And Nepomuceno was very active in that pursuit of freeing Brazil from its onus of slavery. How this represented itself in his song composition, because classical music was Eurocentric during that time and for much later as well, even in Nepomuceno's own life. His insistence, first of all, on using the Portuguese language for song composition was very radical because the powers that be thought it was an unsingable language. Margaret can speak to that, and we speak to that in our poster session as well.
Exactly. So you had a lot of European influence for the music in Brazil in this time and that time. So Nepomuceno brought something new about that. So, okay, let us give more value for the Portuguese language, and also started to put some rhythm that broken a little bit this European tradition to compose music in Brazil.
He also used folkloric melodies. He was from the northeast of Brazil, is where he was born. And the folk tradition area helped to inform harmonies and melodic material as well. He also gave voice to women and poets of color.
Yeah, that was
And
something else that had come up.
radical during his time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, definitely, you know, as many of us are considering, you know, expanding our programming this year, particularly, you know, I mean, congratulations on your contribution. I hope everybody, you know, checks out these songs, because it definitely seems like it's something we need to be exposed to. So thank you so much for your contribution.
You're so welcome.
Yes.
All right, moving on then to, let's see, Logan could not be here, so Doria, we are up to you, and go ahead, introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Dorea Cook, and the topic of my poster presentation is exploring 21st century North American art songs by women composers for the young singer.
We had actually one question, because it just so happened that there were two posters back to back in videos that both had to do with female composers. One person asked if you and Logan's Cassia database had any collaboration at all. I'm assuming not, but that it was a surprise to both of you that you were back to back and both sort of on similar topics, or am I wrong?
You are absolutely correct. I was surprised too, and pleased, because a lot of the composers I'd never even heard of before I started researching them. So the more research is out there, the more people sing the songs, the happier I am.
Absolutely. You mentioned that some of these songs are unpublished, correct?
That is correct.
So is there a way that we might, you know, if someone does discover some of these that you've discussed that are unpublished, how might they go about accessing some of those?
Well, I would suggest actually reaching out to the composers themselves. I have been amazed, and I'm just still full of gratitude for the kindness and the generosity that the composers have shown. I remember, so many composers. I'll use Emma Lou Deemer as an example. I had been trying to track down a couple of her 7 somewhat silly songs for a couple of years, emailed her, and she said, here are the other 5, they are unpublished. I have sung them in a couple of different states in various recitals and have received a lot of good feedback. So I would encourage people, these are living composers, reach out to them, email them. They are generous with their time and with their music, and a lot of them just want it to be sung.
That's fantastic. I mean, yeah, so many of our colleagues, you know, really just want their music being performed. Just a quick follow-up to that. I mean, have you considered perhaps trying to, particularly with the unpublished, maybe some of these composers, maybe trying to get them together to make a little anthology and editing an anthology, or is that not on your radar?
Oh, it's very much on my radar. That's a little bit down the pike a little bit as far as, you know, what I'm doing when, but it is definitely in my plans in the next several years.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Well, thank you so much for your contribution. Thank you so much. All right, Catherine, we are on to you. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Catherine Gardner, and my poster presentation was called Singing for Two, The Experience of Pregnancy for the Classical Singer.
400 plus respondents to your survey. Is that correct? How about
Yes,
we all
that's
give her a
correct.
round of applause for
I feel very lucky that people
Four-
wanted to share with me. Yeah.
400. I've done surveys before and had 12 respondents. No, that's really quite remarkable. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So one question I had sent in, how did your survey results reflect some of your own life experiences, either teacher or singer, teacher with your singers, who maybe you've taught during pregnancy or what have you? Was there something that sort of stuck out and surprised you that the respondents said, or was it all just sort of like, yep, that's, yep, or...
Yeah, definitely some things surprised me and some things aligned with my experience. I was doing this study while I was pregnant and then had my child, so there was a lot of personal reflection going on. I think the biggest thing that I wasn't expecting to hear and that I also experienced was that some of the physical challenges that I knew would be, an issue maybe during pregnancy as far as singing, turned into opportunities to have a deeper understanding of my own technique. And the women that I surveyed also found that. Noticing even like as far as breath, finding different ways to get a full breath despite the fact that this baby is, pushing on all the wrong things. And I found that for me particularly, the experience of pregnancy, I feel made me a better singer, that having to, balance some things, and explore my own technique ended up with me having more confidence in my own technique, because I knew if I could sing then, I could sing anytime. And that's something that I think it was over 60% of women felt that that experience made them better singers. And I wasn't anticipating that. I was thinking, I'd hear a lot about nausea and GERD and, but yeah, that was a positive surprise for sure.
Absolutely. I will just share that was my wife's own experience as well, and she jumped off a tower in playing Tosca 5 months pregnant. So
wow, amazing. And women are doing it. That's the other thing I learned. Like, women are singing while in their second and third trimesters with big costumes and just being amazing.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on your contribution. Are you going to look to publish that as an article?
Yes, I'm working on a few articles as I kind of break it down. And I'm also, once I had my baby, I realized pregnancy was the tip of the iceberg because then you have this child, and how does that, not only breastfeeding and hormones, but also just this person, how does that impact career, singing, practice habits? So I'm doing a survey right now, asking for women to reach out and share their stories with me.
Could ask for dads as well.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, congratulations. Thank you so much for your contribution. Wow.
Thank
excellent.
you.
Excellent. All right. Joshua Glasner, we are on to you. Go ahead and remind us who you are and your poster title.
Of course. My name is Joshua Glasner. My poster title was Listening to the Past, Understanding the Effects of Historical Recording Technology.
One small subset of your dissertation.
Yes. Or more of an overview, I suppose, right?
Sure. One question that we had sent in, well, actually, let me start here. How has this information, specifically, has it informed the way you might prepare or coach or teach a student to listen to recordings?
That's a good question. I suppose the biggest change that it has had on my on the way I teach has been to kind of allow a little bit more freedom. We listen to these older recordings, and a lot of us are usually, as I said in the presentation, a little bit surprised at what we hear. And what this research is seeming to point towards is the possibility that actually what we're hearing is pretty similar to what they actually sounded like. And if that's the case, then it's not so much guiding how I help students listen to recordings, but it really guides how flexible I try and help them to become with their own performance practice, with understanding what was happening in the past and kind of the idea that things will invariably change. So maybe they have the multiple opportunities to change things themselves, to explore different
Absolutely.
possibilities.
So, 30,000 foot view, what has changed in singing since 1900?
I think it's really important to note that this study is specifically looking at the equipment. So I don't know that I can really say at this point how singing has changed. I can say that when we listen to a singer on these recordings and they have a faster vibrato rate or a smaller extent, that is actually what was happening. And that if we hear, certain, that we should be careful with like how we perceive changes in loudness, because we know that there are at that point, at the turn of the century, at the turn of the 20th century, we would have heard, or rather, recording engineers would have actually made these performers kind of move back and forth away and closer to the horn as dynamics change. So we can't necessarily, maybe that's a good answer to your first question, that when we hear dynamic changes, maybe we're not actually hearing true dynamic changes in these recordings, that it's just the person turning towards the wall or moving away from the horn or moving closer.
Excellent, excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much for your contribution, we look forward to hearing more in the future as you continue to release more of it to the public. Very good. All right. Thank you, Matthew Hoch. You are up. Remind us who you are and what your title is.
Yes, my name is Matthew Hoch. I am an associate professor. In August, I'll be a full professor at Auburn University. And we did a study called Physiologic Variables as Correlates to Tone Color in Classically Trained Undergraduate Sopranos, a pilot study. So we basically, and I'll share the actual poster with you. Oh, you disabled screen sharing, so I guess I won't share the poster.
I can
You
put it
enable
on if you bite me. I mean, I guess, yeah. There you go.
Okay, so here's our actual poster, and I'll blow it up to the full angle here. And basically, we asked the question of a lot of people have the opinion that a big voice will come out of a big person, or a heavier voice will come out of someone who's taller. But is that real? I mean, is there really a correlation between the physical parameters of a singer and what we perceive coming out of their mouths when they're singing? So we structured a study that was taking objective measurements and also perceptual measurements. And the objective measurements were, we measured their forced vital lung capacity. We had them do cytokinetic rates. We took a voice range profile for each of 3 different singers. And then we had them do a series of vocalizes. And then the perceptual part of the study came in by engaging Ken Bozeman to write down blindly, he didn't know who the singers were, he didn't see any pictures of them, what he heard. And the hypothesis, the specific research questions were, we predicted there would be a positive correlation between higher measurements of BMI and FVC with determinations of heavier, darker, and dramatic tone color. Our second hypothesis was that there would be a negative correlation between BMI and vocal flexibility. Our third was that there would be a positive correlation between faster LDDK and higher flexibility. Our fourth was that there will be a positive correlation between lighter tone quality and higher flexibility. And number 5 was that lower decibel SPL, sound pressure level, information from the VRP would correlate to lighter tone color. So those are things I think culturally that we might expect out of singers. And we found that our hypotheses were largely correct with 2 of the 3 singers, and the third singer was a complete outlier altogether. The conclusion was that there's not a correlation at this time, but obviously with only 3 singers, you would need to have a much larger sampling of singers, and you would need maybe 3 to 5 people willing to weigh in on perceptual measures. But the results might be the same even with that larger pool. It would be a very difficult study to do on a large scale because you'd need to find some place where you could measure maybe 100 undergraduate sopranos, which only the largest schools of music would probably be capable of handling that kind of a study.
Okay, very good. Well, since you did all the talking, I'm not even going to bother with a question. Matt, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, I should have waited for a question. So.
No, thank you so much for your contribution, and we look forward to seeing if you guys follow it up or anything of that nature.
Thanks.
Can you stop your screen share for me? There you
Yep.
go. Perfect. Brilliant. Okay. All right. Jeremy, we are on to you. Remind us your name and poster title.
I'm Jeremy Monternock, and of a straw phonation protocol on acoustic and perceptual changes in choirs, which is essentially aggregating about 4 or 5 different studies with various colleagues over the past several years.
Excellent. And if I'm correct, this was sort of data pulled from multiple projects. Is that fair to say?
I believe it was about 5 that we really looked at. We had a couple other sort of pilots in there as well, and probably I was just thinking maybe about 400 choristers total.
Awesome. I would just first like to say you're welcome to write my lit reviews for me at any point, at any juncture. Just saying that. Question about listener ratings. Have you had, with any of this data, have you had expert like choral listeners, like I guess, collegiate choral directors, be the listener raters for any of these, or have you done that at all?
We've done it with one of the particular studies, and we were specifically looking in that one. This was the one with 2 matched groups. So we had one group who did the protocol through the straw that I always have near me at any given point, and then we had a group do it through an ah vowel, so completely unoccluded essentially. And with that group we were looking at sort of just after the fact. And in the end, they basically said that it was for both the ah vowel and the straw group post-test. So it's difficult to sort of tease out what are warm-up effects in some of these studies and what are specifically due to the straw. So that's where we're more research there. And I encourage anyone to take this on, where we're looking at sort of pre-post with a control group, maybe after they're already warmed up, so that we can see, does the straw maybe lead to an improved overall sound, or is it just sort of boosts in sound pressure level? Does it lead to maybe more adroit singing? So we're looking at this in with my brother Brian and Lynn Maxfield. We've done some work with CCM singers or music theater singers, and so does the straw maybe leave you with the ability to sing more adroitly in whatever way that you would choose to sing, be it choral singing or CCM or music theater specifically, or classical, that sort of thing. So yes, I think the listener component is one that we need to expand sort of greatly. We've been looking at it more from the acoustic and singer perspective.
Absolutely, we need both. I mean, right? I mean, that's yeah, absolutely. Congratulations! Thank you for your continued contributions. Excellent work. All right, Christopher Mitchell, we are on to you.
Hello, I'm Christopher Mitchell. My poster was Baritones Are Not Basses, Appropriate Song Repertoire for Young Bass Singers.
Definitely a problem I have experienced in my teaching, so I'm glad to see someone doing work on it. For one thing, basses are not baritones, you're totally right. And for another thing, finding repertoire for young bass is an exceedingly difficult challenge. So I'm very thrilled to see you doing this. Out of curiosity, why did you start with English as opposed to maybe not Italian or something?
My personal experience as a teacher was that the English songs are the hardest to find. I actually feel like the 26 hits can be transposed anywhere you want and work pretty well. The Germanic repertoire, actually, there's lots of good bass repertoire in German, so a lot of the standards were, and language for most of your young singers is going to be English in this country. And I found, it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but I was looking for things that were not songs about God or sailors or sea chanties. I almost titled the paper that, but I decided it was a little bit too tongue-in-cheek. But honestly, a lot of the young singers these days to that repertoire at all. I've had one exact singer who I could have fed him as many sea chanties and he would have been happy through his entire life. Most of them get tired of those very, very quickly.
Absolutely. So You know, are you planning to, as you have more of these lists together, planning on considering maybe either publishing the lists as a website or a journal article, or considering, you know, again, an anthology of some sort? What's your sort of future goal here?
Yeah, so the website is live. It's already there, songsforbass.com. So
Oh, yes, I looked at it. That's right. Totally right.
The anthology idea is one that I've definitely considered, and actually spoke to a few of the composers, the living composers at the time, to see if they would be interested in having them included in an anthology. But I haven't done any of the legwork in terms of pursuing publication rights and all those types of things. But I would like to see, especially the things that I gathered from unpublished sources, or from published sources that are hard to find. You know, five songs by Herbert Howells or something is not something that every library is going to have, or people that are going to have access to. So an anthology would be very helpful, I think.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, like I said, I think it's incredibly important work, because it is one of the, I talk about it in PED all the time, it's one of the biggest challenges when you're choosing repertoire, is choosing rep for young bass. So congratulations on this work, and thank you for it. All right, we're going to do one more, folks, and then we're going to log off and log back on. So we will do Heidi, and then we'll come back for Paul and Brianna. So Heidi, you are up.
Hi, the title of my poster was Exploring the Resonance Effect of the Zygomatic Lift, and specifically to ask the question, is it an emotional affect or a consequence of direct physiology?
So, here's a question. Are you, or how do you use zygomatic arch lift in your teaching, and subsequently, has it changed or evolved over your time teaching?
Yes, I actually don't use it at all. I mean, I had a facial paralysis. I was fortunate to study with Richard Miller when I was at Oberlin. So obviously that imprinted me on that strategy. And so I obviously had to switch when I came down with this disability. And the truth is, I was speaking with him over this time and questioned that correlation. There's nothing in the literature that shows a physiological correlation between any zygomatic musculature. And so I was trying to parse out, when you look at all the experiments that have been previously done, there are no controls for other vocal tract distances or even including the affect. And then when you look at neuroscience research, there's a ton of literature on how people even use smile therapy to sort of improve mood, the correlation of higher frequencies to positive mood, and sort of this feedback loop. And so that's what had me then explore, you know, in the trifecta of feedback of a smile versus affect versus higher harmonics. If you start at any point of that trifecta, particularly the positive affect, can you get the higher frequencies? You know, the brain will send a signal of joy or pleasing, and the pharynx can adapt without any external musculature being involved. Yeah, excellent. So that was sort of the point.
Excellent. I love your work, and I think it's great. So, I mean, you know, congratulations. And do you think you'll follow this up in any way?
I mean, obviously, where and funding is the thing. So I'm trying to look at grants to get the appropriate N numbers and things like that. But definitely neuroscientists have been studying it from the other angle. So that's where I draw from most of the conclusions. And even when you say internal, like Ken Bozeman uses the internal smile, you're still giving, even though there's no external, you're giving the clue of smile, right? We can all sort of sense what that is. And that is actually a more emotional affect driven. So I think he's the closest to providing that kind of more internal approach to that directive.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. All right, folks, if we could just log off, quickly log back on, and then we'll have our final two sessions. Thank you so much. Just give me a second to log back on as well. Okay, we'll be right back with everybody.